My wife cheated, called it an open marriage. So I took my money, divorced her, and walked away. My wife, Penelope Penny, as I called her, and I were married for 28 years. In what should have been a new chapter as empty nesters, our 28th year instead marked the end of our marriage. I had hoped this new phase would reignite the passion in our relationship. After years of raising kids and working hard in a small house with thin walls, privacy and energy were luxuries we seldom had. I thought I had everything planned: quality time, rekindling intimacy, and making each other the priority once more. But Penny had different ideas. She was a nurse, dedicated but stagnant in her career. Over the years, she often lamented seeing younger nurses quickly advance while she stayed in the same position. So, when she proposed taking a 6-month pediatric training course out of state to pave the way for her dream role as a head nurse and potentially matron, I was proud of her ambition. But there was a catch. The course required her to relocate, a $250 flight away. 6 months apart wasn't what I envisioned for our rekindling plans. I tried to discuss my concerns, but Penny dismissed them, calling me selfish. She accused me of not supporting her dreams like she'd supported mine. Stung and overwhelmed, I reluctantly agreed, but something felt off. Penny's departure was a whirlwind. She was so excited that she barely remembered to kiss me goodbye. At first, we spoke every evening, but over time, her calls became less frequent. By the 3rd week, she suggested we only talk every other night. By the 4th week, her calls dwindled to 2 a week. Loneliness crept in. Our once vibrant evenings laughing, watching TV, and sharing little moments were now replaced with silence. I missed her, but she seemed engrossed in her new life. When I planned a trip to visit her, she canceled, citing a flu outbreak at the hospital. Fate, however, had other plans. That weekend, I ran into an old friend, Jeff, who invited me to a poker night at the local pub. It was a much-needed distraction, but I couldn't ignore the attention I received from other women. Jeff noticed, too. "Mike, you've been married so long, you don't even realize your appeal," he said. "You're fit, attractive, and unlike half the guys here, you're not dodging alimony or babysitting kids." I laughed it off, but the idea stuck. Was I really oblivious to how my life and marriage were shifting? Penny's texts grew colder, her calls sporadic. One night at the pub, Jeff challenged me to take off my wedding ring and test his theory. Reluctantly, I agreed. Within minutes, a woman approached me. She removed her own wedding ring as she offered to buy me a drink. I politely declined, pointing out her obvious tactic, but it left me unsettled. Had Penny done the same? The weeks turned into months, and the distance between Penny and me felt more emotional than physical. When she finally returned, she seemed different, aloof, distracted. One night, after a tense conversation, she revealed what I had suspected. She'd been seeing someone else. "It's not cheating," she claimed. "It's an open marriage." An open marriage? That was news to me. She painted it as something I had silently agreed to by letting her leave for 6 months. Furious and heartbroken, I decided I'd had enough. Penny had made her choices. Now, it was my turn. I consulted a lawyer, divided our assets, and filed for divorce. I walked away with my savings and my dignity intact. Now, at 48, I'm starting over. It's not easy, but it's liberating. Penny's betrayal was devastating, but it also gave me clarity. I deserve a partner who values honesty and loyalty. And this time, I'll settle for nothing less. She waited for my drink to arrive before placing her own order. Glancing back at her table, I noticed their glasses were mostly full. So it wasn't surprising when my new acquaintance at the bar greeted me and struck up a polite conversation. A quick assessment told me she wasn't my type, and my body language must have given me away because she soon returned to her friends with a tray of drinks. Sipping my own, I awaited Jeff's return from the restroom, ready to confirm his theory. Just then, I heard a soft hello behind me. Turning around, I saw the second single lady from their table, confidently meeting my gaze. With my newfound understanding of the situation, I sensed she was creating an opportunity, but wouldn't be upset if it didn't pan out. If I were single, I would definitely have been interested. She was attractive, slender, but not overly so, with honey-colored hair framing her face and a genuine smile. Glancing at her ring finger and then mine, I noticed neither of us bore any telltale tan lines from removed rings. Custom dictated I offer her a drink, but she declined, opting to sip her own. There was a quiet confidence in her demeanor that I found appealing. She was clearly comfortable in her own skin. We engaged in casual conversation, and 10 minutes later, I confessed that I was married. Despite the absence of a ring, something compelled me to be entirely honest with Andrea, as I learned her name was. She raised an eyebrow, interpreting my behavior as deceptive. "Well," I explained, "one of your friends approached me not 20 minutes ago and was so forthright, she even removed her rings." "Carol?" "She's not exactly my friend," Andrea clarified. "We just met tonight. She's here with Sue, who is my friend. They used to work together. Honestly, it's surprising to see her here. It's a bit sad for her husband, don't you think?" I nodded in agreement and then explained my own situation. I took mine off, not to have fun, but to test my buddy Jeff's theory about why women our age frequent bars. She laughed at the detailed account of Jeff's theory and, mostly, concurred with him. Our conversation shifted to Penny, my wife. Penny had been away on a 6-month course out of state for almost 2 months now, and I hated to admit it, but I felt lost without her. "You must miss her," Andrea said empathetically. "Very much," I replied. "She's busy with work and study. We hardly get to talk. That's why I'm here tired of sitting alone, staring at the walls of our living room." "So you're just seeking companionship? No hookups or one-night stands?" Andrea's directness caught me off guard. "No," I said firmly. "I'm monogamous, but that doesn't mean I can't enjoy female company and conversation." Andrea nodded approvingly. "Well then, let's continue our conversation." Talking to Andrea was easy. She shared how she and her husband had focused so much on their children that, when the nest emptied, they felt like strangers. 6 months ago, they decided to part ways amicably. She relished her newfound freedom, but didn't rule out the possibility of a relationship if the right person came along. Our conversation stretched on for over an hour. Eventually, it became apparent her friends were leaving. Andrea seemed to debate whether to stay or go, but ultimately chose to leave. I took her hesitation as a compliment. She must have enjoyed our company. Compared to Penny's recent rejections, this interaction felt refreshing. For the first time since meeting Andrea, I didn't know how to respond. Was I getting too close? Was I emotionally cheating? Andrea and I never discussed Penny or the state of my marriage, and I hadn't shared anything deeply personal. Yet, admitting this to my wife felt daunting. I carefully typed out a response. "I'm okay. Just had a rough day. See you Thursday if you're at the pub. Take care, Mickey." I reread the message, ensuring it sounded casual before hitting send. Then, I heated up leftovers and ate standing at the sink, realizing Penny and I hadn't talked about my upcoming visit next weekend. Since she hadn't mentioned it, I decided to surprise her by booking a last-minute flight for Friday. I couldn't wait another week. I needed to see her, to remind myself how much I loved her. Although the idea of Penny being unfaithful hadn't crossed my mind, the surprise visit ensured she couldn't brush me off again. Friday evening by 6 p.m., I was at Penny's doorstep. Her housemate Jenny let me in, explaining that Penny and Gail, their other housemate, hadn't returned from school yet. As I retrieved my phone to text Penny, Jenny offered to call her. Before she could dial, the sound of keys at the front door echoed through the house. Penny's face lit up with surprise when she saw me. She greeted me with a quick kiss before darting to the bathroom, phone in hand. I found it odd, but didn't mention it, especially with Jenny nearby. We engaged in awkward small talk while Penny spent an unusually long time in the restroom. When she finally emerged, she hurriedly tidied her room, carrying sheets to the laundry and replacing them with fresh ones. It brought a smile to my face. Was she trying to impress me, like in the early days of our relationship? Once the room was ready, Penny suggested we freshen up together before heading out for dinner. Under the warm cascade of the shower, I felt an intense desire for her, but she teasingly suggested we wait until after dinner, citing her hunger. Dinner, we found a quaint seafood restaurant Penny had recommended. Over 2 bottles of fine Riesling, I made jokes and flirted, trying to recapture the spark we'd had. Despite the pleasant atmosphere, one thing tarnished the evening: Penny's constant interruptions to check her phone. I finally addressed it, risking the mood. "Oh, honey," she explained between bites of salmon. "I wouldn't normally do this, but some of the younger students see me as a mentor. They need me." Her explanation didn't sit well, especially when she asked how long I planned to stay. It felt like she was already planning my departure. Back at the house by the time we returned, it was past 11. Gail's car was in the driveway, but the apartment was quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of the hallway light. As we entered Penny's room, the atmosphere felt different. The passion I'd anticipated was overshadowed by an unspoken tension. Our conversations had felt strained, as if we were no longer the same couple we'd been a few months ago. I tried to bridge the gap, undressing Penny slowly and savoring the moment. Her reactions were different, more uninhibited than usual, which I attributed to the wine. But just as we began to reconnect, an impatient knock shattered the moment. The revelation, a female voice, unfamiliar and irate, demanded entry. Penny's face froze in horror, and everything clicked. The secrecy, the phone calls, her resistance to my visits. The voice outside wasn't just a housemate. It was her lover. Disgust washed over me. Penny's disheveled appearance, the lingering scent of betrayal, and her desperate gaze confirmed my worst fears. I dressed quickly, avoiding her pleading eyes. "Mike, wait, please, let me explain," she cried. I ignored her, grabbed my suitcase, and headed for the door. As I opened it, I came face to face with a young woman who I assumed was Gail. Her shocked expression mirrored mine as I pushed past her. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded. Without turning, I replied, "Penny's ex-husband." Emphasis on ex. I slammed the door behind me, leaving Penny and her lies in the past. I had a flight to catch, a lawyer to call, and a new chapter to begin. I hurried into the living room to grab my laptop, my heart pounding as I rushed back to the bedroom. Every second felt like an eternity as I waited for it to load. With trembling fingers, I logged into our bank account, leaning against the pillows as tears streamed down my face, tears of relief this time. Mike hadn't touched the money. I wiped my tears, ready to log out, but a nagging thought stopped me. Just because he hadn't moved the funds yet didn't mean he wouldn't. Needing to protect myself, I transferred a small amount to an old account in my name, just enough to cover emergencies like flights, taxis, or food. As I prepared to log off, I noticed a notification on the messenger icon. Against my better judgment, curiosity got the better of me. Clicking on it, I saw messages from Jake, a gorgeous 25-year-old. More tears fell, but these weren't tears of relief. They were of disappointment and regret. Despite everything, a part of me longed to hear his voice, to feel desired and admired once more. The memory of his compliments and how they made me feel resurfaced, igniting a dangerous temptation. I cursed Jake for starting this spiral. Memories of my first slip flooded back when I'd had too much to drink, trying to fit in with younger classmates. That night had been good, too good. And after that, I couldn't stop. I craved the feeling of being admired, the sense of power it gave me. But now, I was at war with myself. If I answered Jake's messages, he would come. I clenched my fists, pressing them to my lips to stifle a whimper. If Mike ever found out, it would mean the end of my marriage. As I rolled onto my stomach, the laptop slipped off the bed and crashed to the floor. I didn't care. My tears turned to sobs as I mourned the mess I had created. The price to save my marriage would be steep, but I resolved never to give in to my weakness again. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I drifted off to sleep. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows as I awoke, feeling terrible. After a long shower, I felt a sliver of relief when I unlocked the front door of our home. Mike hadn't changed the locks, a good sign. He hadn't touched the bank accounts, contacted our kids, or filed for divorce. Mike will forgive me, I thought. He's a good man. He loves me. It would take time, but we'd find a way to move forward. Still, doubt lingered. Stepping into the house, I was surprised to find everything spotless. The kitchen and dining room were immaculately clean. Had he prepared for my return? Or was this his way of keeping busy while I was gone? But where was he? It was 6:30. He should have been home. I checked the fridge, finding it fully stocked, including a plate of fried chicken and vegetables wrapped neatly in plastic. Did he really make this for himself? I considered calling him, but hesitated. After our terse conversation on Tuesday, I wasn't sure what to expect. Sighing, I made tea and sat at the dining table, staring at the empty chair opposite me. Memories of lively family dinners came flooding back, filling me with hope. Mike wouldn't want the kids to suffer. For their sake, he'd forgive me. But the question remained, where was he? Determined to find answers, I recalled a vague memory of a name someone Mike had mentioned in the early weeks of my course. Jeff. Yes, Jeff Saunders. Digging through an old address book, I found his number and dialed. It went to voicemail. Frustrated, I thumped the table. Deciding to eat while I waited, I reheated the chicken and sat back down. As I finished my meal, I resolved to try Jeff again. This time, he answered on the third ring. Hello. Jeff's tone was polite but wary. Hi, Jeff. It's Penny Granger. I was wondering if you knew where Mike was? I asked, holding my breath. A pause. Then, he's here. Relief washed over me. Where's here? At the pub. We're at a couples darts competition. I clenched my jaw, suppressing a sarcastic retort. Which pub? The Royal Oak, he replied curtly. Thanking him, I hung up and quickly got ready. My nerves were on edge as I drove to the pub, questioning what Mike was doing at a couples event. Entering the pub, I scanned the room. There he was, focused on a dartboard, a blonde woman seated beside him. She looked up and locked eyes with me. Her expression was calm, almost smug, as she reached over and lightly squeezed Mike's hand. My heart sank as Mike covered her hand with his, a gesture of reassurance. Before I could approach, Jeff appeared at my side. "Penny," he greeted, his tone cautious. "Jeff," I stammered. "Where's Mike?" Jeff's gaze softened. "He's fine. But Penny, maybe this isn't the best time." Anger and humiliation burned inside me. What had I done to my marriage? He seemed fine, more than fine, actually. Great. How could he be okay after? I couldn't even finish the thought. After finding out I'd been cheating on him for 4 months? My cheeks burned with shame and anger. Whether I was guilty or not, it felt wrong for him to bring up my indiscretion so casually. I shot Jeff a withering glare, wishing I could turn him into ash with just a look. But Jeff only chuckled, fueling my frustration further. Clenching my fists, I snapped. "Yes, but it's none of your business," he smirked. "I highly doubt things are as great with Mike as you think. You've been married for 28 years, he loves you. Of course, he's devastated. He's just putting on a brave face to spare you the awkwardness." I bit back a retort, but I had to admit Mike was a good actor. I glanced past Jeff to where Mike stood by the dartboard. His partner, a blonde woman, laughed as he lined up a throw. Something about the way she leaned toward him made my stomach twist. I didn't like it, not one bit. For all my recent flings with men half my age, I wasn't blind to what I'd lost. Those flings were like candy, sweet, light, and addictive, but they lacked the substance of a real meal. Mike was a premium steak, filling, satisfying, and worth savoring. "Who is she?" I asked, hating how vulnerable I sounded. Jeff turned to look at the blonde, a sly smile tugging at his lips. "Andrea." His infuriating vagueness pushed me to ask another question. "Is she here with anyone?" "Yes," he replied. Then, after a pause, "And no." I frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Yes, she's here with someone." "No, she's not married," he clarified, his tone almost gleeful. My chest tightened. I didn't want to ask the next question, but I had to. "Who is she here with?" Jeff's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Mike." I flinched as if I'd been slapped. My voice came out in a bitter whisper. Well, that didn't take him long. Jeff's gaze sharpened, his voice cutting. "He's had 4 months to get used to being alone. Looks like he took to it like a duck to water. Then again, so did you." The sting of his words lingered, mingling with my own self-recrimination. It had been 8 years since Mike divorced me, but the regret still burned fresh. My flings were a hollow victory, momentary highs that faded into emptiness. I had chased the sweetness of newness, only to realize too late that it was never enough. Glancing around the quiet kitchen, I felt the weight of my solitude. These rooms had once been filled with laughter and warmth. Without Mike, they were just rooms. At least he had been kind enough to sell me his share of the house for less than market value. But even that kindness felt like a reminder of what I had lost and what he had gained. Andrea. Damn Andrea. She wasn't just beautiful, she was rich. And she wanted Mike, with or without his money. They were off traveling the world together: Scotland, Venice, Florence, the Greek islands. Soon, they'd be meeting up with their kids and grandkids in Hawaii. And me? I'd spend Christmas alone. Again. I glanced at my reflection in the hallway mirror. The face staring back at me looked worn, older than 56. The young men I once attracted weren't so young anymore. They were in their 30s, even 40s. I sighed, resignation settling over me. What else could I do? The good men my age were already taken. And even if they weren't, none would want someone like me. My reputation preceded me. Moving away might be my only option. But it would mean leaving my children behind, children I already saw far too rarely. While Mike and Andrea sipped Mai Tais in paradise, I'd be here, changing bedding, taking temperatures. A general nurse with nothing to show for the years except a bitter taste in my mouth, a taste of sugar that was never worth the price. Blinking away tears, I whispered to myself, "Why cry? Nobody cares." And with that, I grabbed my bag and headed out the door.